this conversation we're about to get into, this objection that Chris is dealing with, plays so well into a couple hot topics, especially ethics and representation. Chris, go ahead, lay the groundwork for us.
Okay, so FSBO, we go to look at it the first time the homeowner meets us there because, you know, it's fabulous and it's had tons of upgrades and
Heavy duty nails, I bet, too.
And so we go, we walk through, let the owner be with the husband, and the wife and I went and walked the house on FaceTime with her mom that's moving here. And so we get done, they pull out, I'm getting ready to leave because we're going to look at another property for the second time. And the owner about runs down the driveway. Hey, what do you think? What's the feedback? I will take X amount of dollars and anything above you can have. Well, they want
Okay, New Englanders, what do you think of that?
Say that again.
Horrified.
I know. I'm just like, what the heck?
Oh, the net listing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
No, it's not.
No.
Is it legal?
No.
Net listings are terrible. They're terrible. Are they legal in Florida? Yes, they are. There are so many conflicts that come around with net listings. Before we get into Chris's situation, let's get down to one of the worst of them. Let's use Wade's seller, moldy house, and let's just say the house is gorgeous. It's worth, just pretend the house is gorgeous, but her situation is she is fallen behind on her reverse mortgage, and the house is going to be foreclosed on. And the house is worth $500,000. She only owes $225,000, and she says to Wade, "Wade, I need to get this sold. I need to get this sold quick. Just anything you can get me over $250,000. You know, I just need $250,000. You can keep anything above that." And Wade says, this house is worth $500,000. I'll tell you what, I'll buy it from you right now for $300,000. And now you walk away and you have $50,000, $60,000 in your pocket. Wade turns around and flips the house and makes a quick $150,000 by selling it at a discounted price. That is so nasty. I hate net listings. Hate them. You will get in so much trouble by doing a net listing. And that's precisely what this person said. All I want is this. Anything above that you can keep.
Oof.
Chris is representing the buyer. So how do you in good conscience know what the seller is willing to take for a property and then mark it up $20,000 or $30,000? You could. You know,
well, and he has it listed for $35,000 over what he said he would take.
Yep, because he's built in commission room in his mind. Tracy, go ahead.
Is Chris in a single agency with this buyer?
Let's make the assumption yes. Okay, it's a friend of hers, and they're buying it for sale by owner. So there is no brokerage relationship by default or de facto or anything through the board with the seller. So let's assume that Chris is in a single agency relationship. And quite frankly, even if it's transactional brokerage, how would you feel right about taking a larger commission because you know, and let's say that let's say the seller's number is 250 and the buyer says, I'm willing to pay 275. And you sit there and say, I can get paid $25,000 on this deal because the buyer will pay 275 and the seller only needs 250. How are you going to feel at the closing table when that gets disclosed to everybody?
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
So much for your friendship.
Right.
Well,
Exactly.
that's just.
So.
Well, and the buyers already know what my commission is.
Okay. Yeah, the buyers know you're gonna get paid 3%.
Yes.
Okay. So the first step in this is get a commission agreement signed, and you can say to the seller that, you know, I really appreciate that. Thank you. That's very generous of you. My arrangement and the way that I work is strictly percentage based. It's in everybody's best interest to be able to keep everything on the table open right from the get-go. And a percentage of the sales price is the easiest way. So let's just agree that we're going to build 3% into the price. Go ahead and sign here. And you know what? If it's not the right net for you, you can counter the offer, or you can just outright reject it. But this way, everybody is on the same page. Is that fair? No one's going to say no to that.
And
Well,
your
and he's been
reputation is
calling me.
good.
Yeah, and
Was
the
that-
owner, the seller has
Yep.
been calling. And
Okay,
I'm like, so you know, they haven't come up with a number yet.
okay,
When they do, we'll put in an offer.
okay.
And so that communication's open that I have with the seller also. And he knows I need to make a commission. And like you said, I believe
Yep.
he built that in there knowing that was coming.
So what you need to do is get him to first say, yes, we're going to present an offer. And I really appreciate your potential commission to be able to go anything above a certain price. That being said, it's more open and straightforward if we deal on a percentage basis. So this is the compensation that I will earn on this transaction. Whether it's built in, it's always built into the sales price. If you guys end up settling on 515 and you get paid $15,000, or you sell it for 500 and the seller doesn't pay any commission and the buyer writes you a check for 15, you're still getting 15. So it's just easier to disclose it this way. So just get a percentage, get a 3% one-time agreement. All right.
And now, is that one-time agreement just signed by the seller?
Signed by the seller for this particular buyer.
Okay.
Okay. Then you can tell them, say, yes, we're going to be, I'm going to get you a contract. We need to get the commission dealt with first, because in Florida, commission is not a part of the contract. So that needs to be handled first. So I'm going to send you the form for that, sign that, and then we can discuss the contract. Okay. So
Hey,
that
John,
being
can I
said,
ask one question?
yeah, go ahead, Wade.
Sorry to disrupt. In the past, you've also talked about managing the transaction as well, and you throw in another 1% or
Yep.
a flat fee. Is that something you would throw in now, or would you walk away from it at this point?
It
Based
depends.
off of
Chris,
the
does this
rent.
particular seller have an attorney that's going to be handling the closing for them?
No, title company.
Okay. Well, they don't get to choose the title company unless they're going to pay
Right.
the title insurance.
Okay.
buyer
The
does.
seller, the buyer doesn't?
In Collier County, the buyer pays title and buyer chooses the title insurance.
Right, okay.
Okay. So if the seller is going to choose the title company, great. Seller is also going to pay the title insurance. Okay. So
And actually, the seller gave me a name of who he would prefer us to go through.
okay, then
So how do I guide my buyers then?
well, this is actually good for the buyer because the seller is going to pay the title insurance. So what company does the seller suggest using?
I have it written down in their file somewhere. Rick somebody. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, no worries. So
I don't know where I put
breezing through this real quick, you want to get that clear up line 36 so that front page doesn't have that number on there and then all the numbers add up. Okay.
Okay.
Secondly, your mortgage contingency and your closing date are the same.
Okay.
Now, on the buyer's side, I am completely cool with that. I have no problem with that representing the buyer. That's really good for the buyer. Expect the question to come up from the seller. Why do we have to wait this long for their mortgage?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it 45 to 60 days?
is typically 45 days, okay? However, the way this is written, if the buyer, the covering this is pretty easy. The way this is written is the buyer can lose their financing the day of closing and not close. Okay? Typically, there's a breather week or two in between mortgage commitment and closing date.
Okay.
Now, there are a couple other extenuating circumstances. COVID-19, for instance. All right. Right now, every lender is verifying at the closing table that the borrower is employed and verifying after closing before funding that the borrower is employed. So if the borrower gets furloughed 2 hours after signing paperwork, guess what?
Deal's
Closing.
dead.
Deal's done. So there's some protection in there for the buyer that they would get their money back and so forth that way. The other thing in here is I did not see, so just expect the seller to question that. And if they don't, that's okay. You don't represent the seller. If they don't question it, that's fine. The other thing in here that I noticed was missing is
John, what about the COVID-19 addendum?
Hang on.
Okay.
The other thing that I do not see in here is they need to sell their existing home before they can purchase this one, right? Okay, so under other terms and conditions, line 521, you need to put in something to the effect, this contract is contingent upon the buyer's successful sale and closing of their property located at, with the address,
Okay.
okay? The seller may turn it down that way, at which point we can start discussing something like a 48-hour first right of refusal. Okay. And what that gives is that gives the seller the right to still market the property and find another buyer. In the event they get another offer, the buyer has 48 hours to remove their contingency and close, or to withdraw their offer.
Okay. Now, is there a separate form for that?
Nope, that goes in other terms and conditions also.
Okay.
So I would consider, and this is something, if you want to get exact verbiage, this is a Jeff Jones question on how he would like that worded. I would consider putting that 48-hour first right of refusal in the initial contract right from the get-go.
Okay.
All right? So that should cover that.
John, I have a quick question. It's
Go ahead, Gio.
probably referring to that, but in the other side at closing, do we supposed to give keys to the buyer? Do we have to wait until after the bank funds?
I honestly don't think somebody's going to get laid off the day of closing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no,
so
but if the listing agent is requiring this.
if the
I
listing
had that
agent
happen.
yeah,
so.
and if the listing agent is requiring that the keys be given after funding, that's because that's when it is completely legal. Just because paperwork is signed, it does not mean it's done. It's done when the money's transferred. So for
So the
instance,
keys,
if you close at 5 o'clock on Friday, it doesn't fund until Monday.
mhm.
And the keys may not be available till Monday, and that's okay. You
The
just
keys
prepare
has to stay in title,
what's that?
or the keys have to stay in title
Yeah,
company?
the keys would stay with the title company. The keys are essentially in escrow at that point. So
That just happened to me on my last deal that just closed, the one at 12 Oaks.
it's okay.
Yeah, they didn't release the keys until
That is
it was
not
funded.
what Gio wanted to hear. I can tell by that
Sorry.
sigh.
It's coming from the East Coast, so.
I think
Okay.
we did the opposite in Fort Myers.
Listen, everything's up for negotiation. All right.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so Chris, did that help with your sales contract?
Yes, and I'll rewrite it. I'll have you look at it before I send it over to Jeff for that verbiage.
Okay.
just
And
to
I
make
believe you
sure
have
I-
everything worked out. You have everything worked out on the listing contract, right? Correct? You
Yes,
covered
and
that.
they
Okay, good.
signed last night.
Good.
So I've got to get that over. Do I send that over to Jeff for his signature?
Yep, send it over to Jeff, and then you are ready to go on that. Good job. That's 2 deals in one day. Awesome.